Jason Benetti is a Detroit Tiger, and that is absolutely awesome. Let's talk about it all today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Friday, November 10th, 2023. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Jason Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jace case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50-plus infections. Get yours today at jacemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. What a day Thursday was. What a day. Big news out of Tigers camp as Jason Benetti is officially the new play-by-play announcer for the Detroit Tigers. This is massive, right? We'll talk about it. That'll be a majority of the show. We are going to talk a little bit at the end about a report that came out that might imply that the Minnesota Twins are looking to reduce payroll and just like what that means for the landscape of the AL Central, what it means for the Detroit Tigers going forward. That'll be the end of the show. But the beginning here, we're going to get really excited about Jason Benetti and welcome him with open arms. For those who don't know, Benetti was the play-by-play announcer for the Chicago White Sox for the last several years and is from Chicago, a hometown team type of deal, and then was good enough and highly regarded enough and well-liked enough to get in a position where he started doing a lot of nationally televised games, did a lot of kind of ESPN stuff, did a lot of StatCast broadcasts, et cetera, et cetera. So this is legitimately, and I'm not here. We're not going to talk about Matt Shepard. Okay. We already had that conversation. We already discussed the departure of Shepard, what Shep's tenure, we talked about Shep's tenure, what it represented, all of that stuff. Okay. So we're not here to talk about the past. We're here to get excited about the future. And that's what I think everybody should be focused on. And to go from a broadcast in general that was ranked amongst pretty much any website that ranked broadcasts production, that was consistently at the bottom for years and years and years, was consistently at the bottom. And I don't just mean like 24th. I mean like 30th, year in and year out, 29th, 30th, every single year. To go from that to a guy who is legitimately regarded as one of the best play-by-play voices in the entire game of baseball is absolutely remarkable. And it's incredibly exciting. And it's been a whirlwind of a day. We've had his press conference. We'll talk about some of the stuff that he said in there. I mean, just like the media tour that he's now going on, right, is cool to see. But this is, I mean, if you're in any way, shape, or form tapped into the pulse on the White Sox fan base, that fan base is absolutely devastated. And I don't bring that up to like dance on like graves or like point fingers and go, ha ha, he's ours now. I say that just as a representation of how good Jason Benetti is and how beloved he is most likely going to be here. Obviously, I can't predict the future, nothing's for certain, but like he's very good at his job. He's a very good dude. And I think he's going to represent this team and this organization unbelievably well. And I think the fan base is going to be very, very excited to have him. Again, we'll talk about some of the quotes he had later on in the show and just talk about why I may feel like he's going to get along with this fan base incredibly well. But he's been saying a lot of the right stuff, and he's been talking about how much he thinks that this fan base is a diehard fan base, and talked about how even when he was coming in as a visitor, he could tell how much this fan base and this city really got behind their Tigers. And he is a true professional, and I couldn't be more excited. I couldn't be. And one of the things that I think I appreciate on a laundry list of things that I appreciate, I've admired Jason Benetti for years and years. He is truly one of the best in the business at what he does. But one of the things that I really admired early on here, he's been the Tigers play-by-play guy. The time this recording for like 6 hours, 8 hours. So a very, very short tenure. Very early on in his tenure. But something that I appreciate, and something that I appreciate it because I try and relay a similar message on here. And that is, he was asked about, he likes numbers and he is analytically inclined. But he was asked about how often to talk about like those numbers in the broadcast booth and what to bring up and when to bring them up and stuff like that. And his answer wasn't like, oh, I'm just a numbers guy and I want to like throw a bunch of numbers at people. It was something that I talk a lot about a lot on here. And that's that everybody is a fan in their own way. And that's beautiful. And that's the awesome part of baseball. And so he can bring up numbers in one instance and then bring up something that's not analytical at all in the next instance and really cater to everybody and in hopes that everybody that enjoys baseball gets to enjoy baseball in the way they want to enjoy the game of baseball. And I think that that's just so incredible. And I couldn't be more excited about him being here. By all accounts, a fantastic human being. Has talked about what he has overcome in life and how that has led him to here. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. I'm through. I almost said through the moon. That doesn't make sense. I'm through the roof and over the moon for Jason Benetti and for the fan base of the Detroit Tigers because this really means a lot to a lot of people. We'll start by talking. Well, we're like 8 minutes in. Let's talk about the 2024 broadcast. Okay. So in 2024, Benetti is going to be the play-by-play announcer on the TV side of things. That's awesome. 2 thumbs up. Very exciting stuff. And then they also talked about Dan Dickerson is going to be doing some TV. Now, how that's going to work is Benetti is going to be the play-by-play voice for the Tigers on TV for 127 games for the Detroit Tigers in 2024. It's obviously an 162-game season. That leaves 35 games up for grabs. Benetti, again, he's very highly regarded. This guy is very, very good at his job. And so he is going to get multiple and frequent opportunities to do national coverage. And the Tigers sound like they're perfectly cool with letting him continue to do that. It would be a disservice to the game of baseball if the Tigers refuse to let him do that. So I'm glad that he is able to still continue doing stuff on a national stage. I don't know if all 35 of those, I think that's right, math, 35. I don't know if all 35 of those are national games or if there's just some other scheduling stuff in there. But regardless, Dan Dickerson will be the TV play-by-play for those 35 games that Benetti is not. And that is also just as, if not even more awesome. Like, that is so great. And we talked about, when Shepard was let go, how Dickerson was not going to just take over the TV job and like that was never going to happen. This is kind of a nice compromise. He continues to do the radio just like he always has and just like he always wants to. And, there's no change of the guard there. We still have Dan Dickerson on the radio, but for 30 to 35 games a year, because I'd imagine the Tigers will get a couple of nationally broadcasted games too. So maybe Dickerson does 30 games. That's awesome. Anytime Dan Dickerson is in more and more living rooms, that's always a good thing. One of the best, future Hall of Famer, one of the best in the world at his job as well. And just like that, we're back, baby. One of the best radio booths in baseball, one of the best TV play-by-play in baseball. That is now your Detroit Tigers. Let's keep the ball rolling. We're going to talk about who might join him on the color commentary side. There's been some conversations in regards to that. We'll talk about some quotes that he had in the press conference. We'll talk about just the meaning of and what this kind of signifies to have a really good play-by-play announcer in the booth. And then we will, again, at the end of the show, talk about the Minnesota Twins. There's a report that they may be limiting or lowering their payroll in 2024. We'll talk about all of that right after I tell you all about our friends over at Jace Medical. I just learned that you can get a 1-year supply of ED medications with Jace Medical. You don't have to worry about whether or not you can refill your generics for Cialis or Viagra. And this is possible because of our friends over at Jace Medical. Go online right now at jacemedical.com to receive your 12-month supply on your daily medication. Remember to use promo code Locked On at checkout for a discount as well. A verified customer had this to say about Jace Medical, quote, "I am thankful for this service. Supply chain issues caused me to cut pills in half to have it. I ordered most of my daily meds with a year's supply. I also ordered an antibiotic kit, and I feel secure now. Prices are lower than local pharmacies. I highly recommend this for everyone." Again, that's a verified customer on Jace Medical. So if you or someone you love would get some peace of mind by having a year's supply of any daily med, go to jacemedical.com to see if it's offered for you. Remember to use promo code Locked On for $20 off of your purchase. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2 of Locked On Tigers. I appreciate y'all for tuning in, making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We will be back on Monday talking about this offseason. Again, next week is when we have Rule 5 decisions to come to ahead. We have some more free agent conversations to go over. Plenty to discuss next week here on Locked On Tigers. But today we're celebrating the acquisition, we'll call it, of Jason Benetti. I don't think anyone should take this lightly either. There's been a ton of great coverage surrounding this situation. Again, I say this pretty much every day, but we have fantastic beat writers here, and there's already been a lot. Evan Woodbury, I know, already wrote a piece on it. There's been a lot of really, really good coverage and just kind of like breaking down of this situation. And Woodbury, I believe, of M Live is one of the people that really brought up the point of like Benetti left a hometown gig. Like he went to school to be a broadcaster, being a play-by-play announcer, and then got a job with his hometown team and is coming to the Detroit Tigers. Like we should not take that lightly whatsoever. This is a guy that's great at his job. He's a great human being by all accounts. Like there is so much to be excited for. And it's important to know, like he showed, and he had a couple of great quotes about that as well. You know, talked about how very early on he just felt like the fit was amazing, and he said that it doesn't make it any less difficult or doesn't make it any less emotional to put the White Sox in the rearview mirror and leave that organization, but he said that it was just such a perfect fit and that it was a very creative, he kept using the word creative, organization and process, and that the organization just wants to put together the best broadcast team possible. And I know that for the last 5 or 6 years, a lot of the fan base would hear that quote and laugh at it. I think today is probably a marker or a what's the word I'm thinking of? A signifier that might be true now. And that's super exciting. And I know, like, we're making this big deal out of a broadcaster. Like, we need the product on the field to be good as well. We have a whole offseason ahead of us. Hopefully the team continues to get better too. But this has a really, this is important. This is meaningful. You look at the history of the Detroit Tigers. It's one of the longest and oldest histories in the game of baseball. This team's been around for well over a century. And throughout the media age in the Detroit Tigers history, they have almost always had a legend somewhere in their broadcast team. Obviously, Ernie Harwell, right? One of the greatest, if not the greatest radio broadcaster to ever go into a booth, right? And then we still have Dan Dickerson. You know, everybody loved George Kell. I have George Kell's book somewhere in here. I'm still unpacking from moving. Hello, everybody. I'm George Kell. Right? There's so much. Mario and Rod were beloved in this city. We don't have to talk about the ending for that, but like that was a historic, like will forever be tied to my childhood was the two of them, right? for 15, almost 20 years. Those guys were the voice of the Detroit Tigers, along with Dan, obviously. And it's been so heartbreaking to watch. And again, this is not a personal attack at all on the previous era of broadcasting, but it's been heartbreaking to watch the general public, not just the city of Detroit, but critics across the country continuously just be like, that is one of the worst broadcasts in baseball, year in and year out, because that has never been the case in this city for as long as I've been alive and for as long as most people, no matter how old you are, that are fans of the Detroit Tigers have been alive. And I also think it signifies a potential, obviously, again, a new play-by-play is not going to inherently make the team better. Okay, so I'm before I see a comment that says that, not what I'm trying to say. But it's just so different watching when the product on TV is better. And all of the great eras of Tigers baseball have been surrounded by fantastic calls on the radio or on TV, right? Always. There's iconic moments sprinkled throughout the history of the Detroit Tigers, and they're all associated with great calls. And it would have been heartbreaking if this team continued to take steps in the right direction, continued to get better, and the broadcast product as a whole continued to rank at the bottom of baseball. That would have been sad. And now we have a chance for that to not be the case. And that's so awesome. Everybody asking me about color commentary. An important thing to note here is that Benetti was hired by the Detroit Tigers, not by Bally Sports. That is something that nobody should just mull over. That is very important information. Bally has very famously not been doing well financially for a few years now, and we don't know the future of Bally Sports. I'm not a money guru. I'm not in those meetings. I have no idea. Maybe they're making money hand over fist and they're going to be around for the next 30 years. I have no idea. But all reports have been that Bally is not headed in a fantastic direction as a company. And so the fact that he is hired directly under the Detroit Tigers, I think shouldn't be taken lightly either. That means no matter what happens with Bally, no matter what happens with, does MLB start having packages for people to buy for to watch their own team? Does baseball have their own network? Do we get another regional network like Fox and Bally? Do we get a city network? Do the Illiches finally do the Detroit network thing that they talked about a decade ago and never did? They have a history of that. Whatever happens, Jason Benetti's going to be there. There's nice reassurance in that. There's also, as far as color commentary goes, that was my original point here before ADHD took over. For now, there has been no getting rid of or parting of ways with Craig Monroe and Dan Petrie and the likes. So I don't know what the future of color holds, but I will say that there was a report from the Tigers that they are going to continue to look at who to pair with Benetti over the offseason and will make a second announcement on who those people or that person is going to be as we get closer to opening day. That would imply that they are on the hunt and still looking. That doesn't mean that it's a guarantee it won't be somebody we're used to, but there is a chance that it's a completely new booth. And again, that's exciting. Whether you loved the previous group or hated them, something new is exciting for this new era that we're hoping to head into in Tigers baseball. Okay, we'll wrap up this conversation. Then we'll have a conversation about the American League Central right after this. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Third and final segment of Locked On Tigers. I appreciate y'all for tuning in as always. So the last thing I just want to talk about is Benetti had a fantastic quote at one point in the presser. I was going to say at the end, but I don't think it was at the very end, where he had talked about his overcoming of obstacles in his life. And Jason Benetti has cerebral palsy and is very open about his overcoming that situation, and works with a lot of foundations that help people that have cerebral palsy. And he had a quote in there that talked about how people very often in his entire life have looked at him and put a limit on what he could accomplish and have underestimated him. And he said it's not even really in like a chip on the shoulder type of way. It's just like true. Like people look at him and think that he can't do some things that he can do. And he said that one of the reasons that he loves and is so excited to get started here is because he views the city of Detroit in a similar light, where a lot of people look at the city of Detroit and underestimate what the city can do and what the people of Detroit can do. Man, is it awesome to have somebody who just gets it, you know? And like, I'm not trying to be like, oh, Detroit versus everybody, like shove that in everybody's face or whatever, but it's just there've been it's just nice. It's nice to have somebody who is going to be in our living rooms and a part of our lives every single game next summer. Just understand the vibe of the city. That's really cool. That's really, really cool. And the exact quote is all over the internet. I retweeted it. You can go find it on my page. It's a fantastic quote, and a lot of people really, really took it to heart, I think. And just the again, the vibe of being underrated or underappreciated or underestimated is definitely something that a lot of people in this city resonate with. So I'm pumped. I'm really, really excited. This is very, very important to a lot of people. There's some people out there that are saying this is the biggest Tigers free agent acquisition in the last 7 years. You might not be wrong. You might be right. You might be right. For real. You might be right. This is very cool. And again, I know a lot of people I'm aware are going to be like, why are we making such a big deal out of play-by-play, or like this, isn't going to contribute to the win column and blah, blah, blah. A, let people be happy. B, the game of baseball broadcasting is very, very important, and is something that does mean a lot to a lot of people. And it's an art. And you associate memories, right? I already said it earlier. I associate my childhood with Mario and Rod and Dan Dickerson. And the era before me, right? Ernie Harwell. For so many people in this beautiful city, Ernie Harwell is the voice of their childhood. Like I said, George Kell a little bit for some people. There's moments, and even if it's not baseball related moments, even if it's not watching Maglio hit a walk-off homer to send you to the World Series, or even if it's not Kirk Gibson hitting a home run in the World Series because the Padres didn't want to walk him. Like, even if it's not a baseball moment, right? Hanging out with family with the radio on, hanging out with your family on a summer night and watching the Detroit Tigers on TV in your living room. Those are things you cherish forever. And that's what makes baseball so awesome. And that's what makes broadcasting important. And the Detroit Tigers have a laundry list of very, very, very talented broadcasters in its history. And I truly believe Jason Benetti has an opportunity to be put on that list and be the voice of the next generation of not only Tigers fans, but hopefully the next generation of good Tigers baseball. If you can't tell, I'm very excited. The last thing before we get you out of here, there was a report by MLB Trade Rumors that, which again, props to MLB Trade Rumors. I feel like I say this every time, but it's a website that went from literally just a website where they were just posting about trade rumors they heard to now like a legitimate, credible news source and used by like beat writers and fans and media members alike. So that the Minnesota Twins are looking to limit, or let me get the exact wording out for you. I believe it was limit payroll, but it might have straight up been reduce. Yeah, Twins planning to reduce payroll, and that's a report by the president of baseball operations. Made that statement at the GM meetings, November 7th, 2023. So about 3 days ago as you're listening to this. Go do it. Right? The White Sox have been gutted internally, externally. Clearly, we played a small part in that. I apologize to the White Sox faithful out there. But like their organization is going nowhere fast. They are in the dumps. And that's not a very great situation. The Royals are still the Royals. The Guardians, I don't think are going to start randomly spending money this year, but like they'll be around. They'll be around 500. Some years just better than 500. Some years just worse than 500. They'll be in the mix. And the Twins did what they did this year and are looking to reduce payroll. I don't think people really realize, and we'll have this conversation more in depth next week, the Detroit Tigers payroll right now, if the season started today, would be like lower than the A's last season. It would be like historically low. It would be astronomically low. Okay. So, and I'm not saying it's going to stay like that. We have all the free agency to go. Okay. Free agents haven't even started signing yet. I'm not trying to be like run around trying to freak everybody out. I'm saying you have a window. You were just a few games under 500 with very little resources at your disposal. Go do something about it. Go take this awful division. What are we going to apologize for being in the worst division in baseball? I'm not. I don't control that. Sorry. My therapist tells me to let go of things I can't control. Just doing what she told me. Right? Like, but seriously, like, what are we supposed to do about that? Almost just knocked over my water. What are we supposed to do about that? Go take it. Go take it. And I'm not saying spend stupid money, right? We've been there. We're currently still dealing with some stupid money that was spent. Okay, I'm not saying don't just go spend to spend, but the last year has been not a lot of money. Period. Use all the money that came off the books. Spend it smartly. Get a team that can go take the freaking American League Central. No one in this division is going blank to the wall. Nobody. Again, the White Sox aren't. The Royals aren't. The Guardians, I don't think ever will, truly go all in. And the Twins are actively, openly, with the world, just like, yeah, well, we're going to try to maybe not go as aggressive this year. Who does that leave? The team that just finished a few games under 500 and is paying nobody. Go do something about it. Kick off this beautiful new era of Detroit Tigers broadcasting with a good baseball team. You'll get people in the stadium. You'll get people watching on TV. And the boys of summer will be back. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We will be back on Monday talking about the offseason as it rolls along. More things to discuss, plenty more things to discuss in terms of the Tigers offseason. I'll see you then, baby. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope, and I'll see you then, baby. I just said that. Go Tigers.